action.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is Dubs OT.
Can't wait.
With John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
But from down 30 to within 16, you got 4 seconds to work with. Melton, push ahead, Kuminga. JK down the lane. That's going to count. What a play by Melton. What a play by Kuminga. Both on the same page.
Yeah, driving layup there for Jonathan Kuminga to end the third quarter as the Warriors were down by 14 at that point in a game they would trail by as many as 30. Welcome to life without Jimmy Butler III as we welcome you in to Dubs OT with JD here on Esports Leader as the Warriors get blasted. Although it did get fun in the second half, the 30-point lead did get all the way down to 9. Single digits. Jonathan Kuminga back in the rotation despite a pretty harsh comment from Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy, which we're going to play for you here at some point between now and about 11:15. Good to be with you again, as always, out here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City, as we will be after each and every Dubs home game here for the remainder of the 2025-26 season. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 to give us a call or shoot us a text here. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line is open. We've got Kyle Haar in the Daly City studios. Appreciate that as well, and we'll get to Kyle's clicks coming up momentarily. I want to start with this, and we got a lot to get to, but I want to start as I often do. I go from the media section where we all watch the game in Chase Center, and the game will end, and I'll grab my laptop and my little kit that's got the headset in it and walk across Thrive City, very close to where Harmonic is here in Thrive City. And I'll hop over when the game ends. And as I was on the concourse going from my seat out the door, which leads to Harmonic, I got caught by one of the great ushers and security folks in Chase Center. And Chase Center's got many greats, and Oracle Arena over in Oakland had many greats, truly part of the charm of both buildings, and a lot of people that move from Oracle to Chase, although not everybody, but truly the charm. These people know ball, they're into it, they're excited. And the gentleman caught me on the way out, and he said, "Hey, JD, did that remind you of anything?" And I go, "Well, actually it did." And I kind of paused and like, "Did that remind you of a game?" And he kind of looks and he says, It reminded me of, not me, he says it reminded him of 2019. He goes, 2019, game 6, after a player goes down with an ACL and they fight and come back. And I said, "Oh, no, it actually reminded me of like 2003. And he kind of laughs and he goes, and I go, "Yeah, a bunch of young players, kind of a mishmash of a roster. No stars. They fought. They played hard. The crowd got really into it. The crowd was jacked inside Chase Center tonight. Crowd got really into it. But the Warriors ultimately were down between 30 and 9 for the entire second half. Wound up losing the game by 18. And I said, yeah, some moments, some bright spots, some young players really out there competing and playing hard. It's not really going to go anywhere." It basically reminded me more of it's a great timeout era than it did the fighting and scratching and clawing and all of the heart and grit and tenacity that was shown by that team the night that Klay Thompson went down in Game 6 of the NBA Finals back on June the 13th of 2019. But he caught a chuckle because that's really what I thought about tonight overall. It's kind of welcome to life without Jimmy Butler. And we'll get into all of it. I think the Warriors probably played the worst possible opponent, or among the worst possible opponents they could play in their first game without Jimmy Butler III. And we saw back at the end of December what Toronto could do to the Warriors team with the length and size and athleticism. And the Warriors just were not engaged at all tonight defensively. Toronto came out, they were hitting shots, they were getting into the mid-range, they were really doing whatever they wanted throughout the course of the night, as is the case when a team will put up more than 70 in each half, and the Warriors gave up 70 in the first half. They ended up giving up 75 in the second half for 145. Most points scored by a Warriors opponent this season as they give up the 145. But they did show some fight in the second half, and that was led by Jonathan Kuminga. He came in after not playing particularly well in the first half, but knocking off the rust with the game basically decided. And he made everybody think inside Chase Center that maybe the game was not decided at that point. He goes for 20 in the second half and winds up with a 12-point third quarter, 8 in the fourth quarter. Warriors cut a 28-point deficit at the point when he came into the game down to 14 going to the fourth. And Draymond set him up for a dunk on the first one, and then it was a lot of the Minnesota series, Kuminga, basically allowing him without Steph or Jimmy on the floor to just kind of be the lead dog. Buddy Hield got hot and wound up pouring in 25 points for the Dubs and hit 6 of 6 from three-point range. Buddy, along with JK, doing their best to make it interesting as much as possibly could be in the second half after getting down by 30. But Kuminga gets some credit, I think, for the way that he played in the second half. The unfortunate component to it, though, again, is it's predominantly without Steph, of course, without Jimmy, who's now going to be done for the season, and done with the Warriors getting blown out in a game, and it doesn't wind up necessarily impacting the outcome. It felt very Minnesota Series E as he ends up with the 20 points. But again, hadn't played since December the 18th. It was basically almost 5 full weeks since he had last been out on the court in any form or fashion. And there was a lot of discussion pregame about not only the trade demand, but would Kuminga be ready to play? Would Kuminga even want to play if he was tapped on the shoulder? And I think, Steve went to him. And again, I'm not going to quibble with anything about his first half. I mean, the guy hadn't played in over a month. So if he looked a little bit shaky or a little bit rusty, I think that's normal. But then he got more comfortable. And so we'll see. I think he earned an opportunity tonight to play more. But can he do that when he's on the floor with the other key Warrior stakeholders in an attempt to help them try to salvage some wins here in the absence of Jimmy Butler to try and maintain and earn themselves a playoff spot? That's something that obviously remains to be seen here moving forward. But again, Jonathan Kuminga on a night that was, I think, as much about the aftermath of the Jimmy Butler loss and where do the Warriors go from here. The very quick subhead to all of that was Jonathan Kuminga. But again, unfortunately, it's in one of these scenarios that have been the most frequent opportunities for Kuminga to thrive and flourish, which are these opportunities where basically it doesn't impact winning in a meaningful way, or is done in a game that essentially at the point in which he started cooking was basically decided. So what does that mean now with 2 weeks and 2 days to go before the trade deadline? Remains to be seen, because as Mike Dunleavy pointed out during his pregame press conference, and he did meet with the media pregame, as did Steve Kerr, who does after each or before each and every game. What's going on, brother? Everything is kind of being reevaluated for the Dubs now at 25-20, trade deadline a couple of weeks away. And of course, Jimmy Butler officially lost due to the ACL for the remainder of the season. So what does the Kuminga performance mean is kind of the question of the night for you out there in the YouTube chat. 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627 is the number to jump in and join the conversation. The Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. because I also kind of flashed, and I was talking to our buddy Austin Scott as we were walking out before I got grabbed by the usher who thought that was such an inspiring performance after there wasn't a whole lot inspiring about the first half, about the way the Warriors played. And I think natural to be a little bit shell-shocked, and I do want to touch on that coming up here in just a second, because as much as you can praise the young guys in the second half for fighting, led by Jonathan Kuminga, I think you also can look at the first half led by Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, and they look like two shell-shocked, four-time NBA champions who know that this team's got no shot to do anything meaningful for the remainder of this season, and then they went out there and played like it. And I always say the champions know when a team has or doesn't have it, and the loss of Jimmy Butler in the moment in which they were playing their best basketball of the season with some optimism that they were going to look to make a trade here in 2 weeks and 2 days to try to add to it and see how far they could take it. Maybe a 6 seed, maybe a 4 seed. Could they make a little noise in the playoffs? Some of it, the matchup, which of course is a bad one for Golden State with all the length and athleticism Toronto possesses in terms of players up and down their roster and talented people and guys who can do different things that make kind of a matchup nightmare for the Dubs. The flip side of the young guys doing their thing in the second half, once the game looked to be decided, to make everybody think maybe it wasn't decided, is how Steph and Draymond looked in the first half, because they looked shook. They looked like, what's left to fight for the remainder of this season? And that's going to have to be something that internally is figured out, because the only thing, whether Kuminga goes or stays, the only way this team's going to be able to salvage any semblance of a successful season between now and the middle of April is if they could somehow get the young players on the same page with the veteran players and try to make it all mesh, even without Jimmy. And I think tonight, Kuminga winds up being a story, but how the Warriors looked in terms of Steph and Draymond and a lot of the vets tonight looked like they had lost a little bit of their mojo with the now finality of the fact that Jimmy Butler is gone and not going to be available here for the remainder of this 2025-26 season. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. The number to jump in and join the conversation, 415-808-5627. Again, 808 KNBR, Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch here. We're going to hear from Mike Dunleavy. We're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up. We're probably going to do that in our second segment because, again, the pregame press conferences tonight were as important or more than I think anything that actually played out in the game. But what did the Kuminga performance mean? Can it translate to where he can do that with Steph and with Draymond? Does it even matter at this point? Because he still, I think, has made it pretty clear via the reporting that he doesn't want to be here. I got to be honest, from being in the pregame press conferences for Kerr and Dunleavy, and we'll play the clip from Dunleavy, I thought it was as harsh and biting a comment in terms of Kuminga's demand and the demand of value. It was basically Mike Dunleavy saying to Jonathan Kuminga, hey, if you want out of here, go out there and put up some freaking numbers because we're going to give you an opportunity. Your value is squat right now because of the way that you've played basically since the first 5 games of the season when you were given opportunities. In essence, pipe down about having a demand when there's no demand for you. And the league is basically saying what they view him to be in terms of a player. So a lot to chew on. 808 KNBR. Let's get to Kyle's clicks here to open up the show as the Warriors, again, get beat 145 to 127. It was a night where the worst 2 players on the floor tonight for the Warriors in terms of plus minus were Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. The worst 2 players on the floor. And you don't see that often, but it was Steph, it was Draymond, it was Podziemski, who immediately, without Jimmy Butler, is somebody who can't hit a shot from the outside. Moses Moody didn't play well. Again, the starters tonight got cooked by the Toronto starters for the most part, as it winds up being a 145 to 127 win for Toronto. Let's get it rolling here, Kyle, in the YouTube chat from Harmonic. I knew about Brock first. Going back to JK is going back to something that has already proven not to work. I don't disagree with that, but how do you not go back to JK? And look, I don't view Kuminga's performance tonight as some kind of aha or gotcha moment, given the way that it shook out. Again, very much aligned, as I said, with the Minnesota series, where it was a game that the Warriors weren't going to win. They never really truly were threatening to win despite the energy of the crowd. But he was out there after the first couple of plays when Draymond hit him for the dunk and he got to the line, and he was out there basically with the freedom to operate in the manner that he wants to operate. Pull up jumpers, take a three, try to draw fouls, put it on the deck. Turnovers, be damned. He had, I think, one turnover. I might have ended up being two turnovers. I guess it did end up being two turnovers. But again, I've said this a lot as it relates to Kuminga. It's, he truly needs an environment where winning isn't important and he can go out there in the context of what he believes his skill set is. And he showed it, I thought, as that second half went on, and be able to operate in that manner, and be the focal point, basically. Now, does that increase his value? I don't know. In terms of a trade, does it increase his ability to help the Warriors between now and the end of the season? I mean, stay tuned on that if he winds it. The one thing it might do, and this is what I said to Austin Scott, is, watch Jonathan Kuminga. And look, Joe Lacob's out of his seat with every play. I mean, he is out of his seat with every play, fist pumping and jumping up and down and thrilled. But again, I said to Austin, I said, watch, Kuminga is going to play well enough to where they hang on to him, and then this whole situation is just not going to wind up having a resolution, and we're basically going to watch a lot of games between now and April that are like tonight, where Kuminga has some high moments and the crowd gets into it, but this Warriors team, if it can't be connected to Steph and Draymond and DeAnthony Melton and the others, they're just going to be taking it on the chin more often than they're not. And ultimately, who wins in that? Who wins in that? I mean, maybe JK, if his value can be increased between now and the regular season and you head toward the offseason. But, again, it just kind of left with, some thrills tonight. It was kind of fun, but Warriors take an L, and what does it really all in the grand scheme of things mean? Other than, good for Jonathan Kuminga to be ready to go out there and play when he was tapped on the shoulder. And I give Steve Kerr credit for giving him the opportunity when everybody continues to shout that it's personal and they're trying to keep him down and all of that. So I think the credit goes to both sides as it relates to that. And that is the one maybe more refreshing part of it, is once you rip the Band-Aid off and you kind of go back to putting him in the game, it does make it easier to continue to play him without it being so awkward. But again, I don't know what that means in terms of wins and losses and what I think the Warriors are trying to salvage what's left of this season, knowing they're not going to have Jimmy Butler here moving forward, and set themselves up, because that's the other part of it. It's not just salvage this season, because let's be real. The Warriors cannot win a championship this season. It's done. If they had a 2% chance, 27 hours ago, if they had a 2% chance or a 5% chance 27 hours ago, they have a 0% chance now with the roster as it's currently constituted. But can you salvage this, what's remaining, and the opportunities, trade deadline and then off season, to set yourself up to where if you make the choice to bring Jimmy back, and Mike Dunleavy seemed, and I'm not sure you take him necessarily at his word in this, but he seemed pretty confident pregame that, hey, this is a recoverable injury even for a 37-year-old player, and that basically the Warriors are looking at it right now as, hey, let's look to continue to have let's look to be in a position where Jimmy can come back and give him a boost at some point around December or January, a year from now. But how do you maximize the ability to put yourself in a position where Jimmy can actually help that? I think is the most important thing here. And again, you only have so many times on the calendar in which you can look to improve your roster, and the trade deadline is one. Obviously, the draft and free agency is another throughout the course of the summer. So I think the Warriors can't really skimp on either opportunity. Jilkin, 51-44, playing without Jimmy in some ways shows the intangibles he brings by making others play better. My biggest concern with the Warriors not having Jimmy, and look, Steve Kerr mentioned it pregame, and I'll just give you some of the details as far as Kerr. He was really concerned about, number one, Butler's ability to get to the free throw line. He said the Warriors are going to have to push the ball, get in transition more often, have to also take care of the ball. But it was to me, it's as much about how confidently Podziemski and Moody and others were playing around Jimmy. And that would be my number one concern, is that immediately those that had been playing well around Jimmy go right back to being the guys that we've seen prior to the Jimmy Butler trade. And how about this stat? And look, the first half was ugly. Ugly. Warriors were down 28 at halftime. And I saw this note, and we're not even going to save it for fun with numbers here on Dubs OT. The Warriors missed 8 layups and 7 free throws in the first half tonight. 8 layups and 7 free throws. When's the last time that happened? It happened February 3rd of 2025, which was the second to last game before the Warriors made the Jimmy Butler trade. That was a home game against Orlando. And then they went to Utah and tricked away that game on the night that they made the trade. And then they played in L.A. the next night before going to Chicago, and Jimmy made his debut in early February. So the concern is that a lot of the guys who had figured out how to play around Jimmy now all of a sudden can't perform, despite the fact that Steve did say he was pretty confident in their ability to do so during his pregame press conference. There was a lot of Steve trying, I think, to speak and will a lot of positivity in the sustainability of the things that the Warriors have done well over the course of the last month, being able to still continue to be part of the equation moving forward here. But yeah, 8 missed layups and 7 free throws. Last time they did that was essentially right before the Jimmy Butler trade. So the intangibles are certainly a huge deal. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM San Francisco, the sports leader, a Cumulus media station, Dubs OT with JD, as we roll into the 10 o'clock hour here on the sports leader. Let's keep it moving in the chat. Max Lopez, if they had a 2% chance 72 hours ago, what are their chances getting a 37-year-old off an ACL next year? Come on. Fair point. It's a fair point. So what's the answer then? Tear it down to the studs? And again, I don't think that's on the table at this point. And again, we'll see. The Warriors are going to have everybody's favorite word, optionality, moving forward as they could trade Jimmy in the next 2 weeks. I don't think they're going to. They could trade Jimmy in the offseason. They could trade Kuminga in the next 2 weeks. They could trade Kuminga in the offseason. They could shed salary at the deadline by adding picks to save on luxury tax money. They could hang on to everybody and just run it out there and let Kuminga have the final 2 months of the season, 2.5 months of the season be, 37 more games of the Minnesota series. And maybe that ultimately boosts his value to a point where you could get more for him then than you can now. I think that's more on the table at 10:07 than it would have been at 7:07 3 hours ago before the game tipped off. And so all of these things matter as we evaluate who does what on a night in, night out basis. Appreciate the comment, Max. Rolda Woodruff. Warriors just need to lock into some solid lineup. Steph, Melton, Moody, Green, Post. BP should not be starting. He's better off the bench. I was not surprised that Brandon Podziemski moved into the starting lineup. I thought Steve would want a connector. I will say I don't think this was the best team to move Brandon Podziemski into the starting lineup against. That being said, I don't think they're going to start DeAnthony Melton because of the minutes restriction cap that's on Melton. And again, what might have been as it relates to if Jimmy Butler had been able to stay healthy and the ability to have DeAnthony Melton at some point as the games became more meaningful, if need be, get inserted into that starting lineup. Because I think we would all agree the Warriors' best starting lineup on paper would have been Steph, Melton. I think Steph, Melton, Moody, Jimmy, and Draymond eventually. But again, that's not happening at least probably for the next 9 to 12 months. All right, let's keep it moving here in the YouTube chat. It's like the Melton situation last year, but with a bigger contract. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. $54.1 million is what Jimmy Butler makes this season, and he makes, I think, a little north of 60 for next season. So it is a scenario where if the Warriors wanted to, for example, they could look to trade him for Anthony Davis. If Dallas was willing to tango, and maybe another team would have to get involved to facilitate maneuvering around other players and picks in an attempt to make that happen. Now, why would Dallas want Jimmy Butler? Maybe there would be another team that would want Jimmy Butler at that point. Again, it's an option, and I did a video for the KNBR socials earlier where I just laid it out. I mean, the Warriors are going to have to be creative, I think, in exploring everything. And Mike Dunleavy said he wants to look at the next couple of weeks here in the lead up to the deadline and see how this team plays to get a clearer picture as to what exactly they need at the deadline with the team that they currently have. He pretty much said he felt he had a great idea of what it was going to be before, but again, everything's changed. And so, I mentioned it. You got to be creative. You got to look at, I think, potential buy low players. Zion Williamson, I think, is somebody you'd need to look at. Anthony Davis is somebody you'd need to look at. I mentioned Jeremy Grant, whose name had been popped up. I know Lauri Markkanen, Tim Kawakami, the Standard, wrote about him. I mentioned him in that video. You got to look to be creative. And I still maintain you got to look to try to do what you can without maybe looking to move the Jimmy contract, unless it's for somebody like Davis. But try to move the Jimmy contract and potentially Buddy and potentially Moody and see what kind of player you can get there. In essence, look to make the move that you were going to make anyway if your belief is that you're going to be counting on Jimmy Butler coming back at some point in the early to midpoint of next year. In essence, or at least believe in what you have in Jimmy Butler, so you build the roster toward him coming back and him being the finishing piece, albeit gambling on the notion that a 37-year-old Jimmy Butler could come back and be some semblance of the player he's been off of an ACL, which is absolutely no guarantee. Absolutely no guarantee, and there's a risk involved there. But if you don't think he can do it, then move him. If you think he can, then maybe you don't. It's not an exact science. But again, we're talking about different ways in which the Warriors are going to have to evaluate the next 2 weeks and 2 days and the next 5 to 7 months and the next 9 to 12 months, basically, that Jimmy Butler is going to be out. But yes, on paper, it is very much like the Melton situation. They could do it just with a bigger contract, but the early returns and sense is that maybe they wouldn't do it at this particular point in time. All right, let's keep it moving. In the chat, a lot of great chats. Appreciate everybody. At this point, JD made the point that it'll be better to keep JK for the rest of the season to build his trade value. Don't think JK value is very high now. I mean, again, everything changed last night. And, Kuminga was gone 27 hours ago. And the reality of the situation is whether he wants to be or not, he may not be gone now. That's just fact. And again, you're looking to try and control as much as you can in terms of assets. And so, him coming out and getting, 20 points and being a spark plug in a second half. Now, if he could do that regularly, maybe he helps the Warriors win some games, but at a minimum, he would at least help the trade value a little bit, and some of the cloak of everything that's been hanging over some of the toxicity between him and the organization from the last few months might be relieved a little bit. But one game doesn't change anything more than the fact that he wasn't playing, at least in the eyes of Mike Dunleavy, would change anything to begin with. But, no cap, Kuminga value isn't going to get any better. He is who he is. Teams just don't want him. Warriors should just take DeMar and Keon back and be happy. Yeah, I acknowledge that as well in the video that I did for the KNBR Social, no cap. And I mentioned it it's funny, I mentioned it mid-third quarter. It was kind of as Kuminga was coming into the game and he got on that little heater with Buddy Hield as the Warriors were down near 30. I said, hey, you know what? I was a hard no on DeRozan with Jimmy. But the Warriors do need somebody that can just get a bucket in kind of a smooth way. And DeRozan doesn't play defense, and DeRozan is small. You think of him as a wing, but he really is more of a guard. He's kind of smaller than you think when you watch him. He doesn't defend. Again, he isn't really a winning player at the higher levels, but I kind of joked. I mean, getting into the play-in tournament is that's basically been right up his alley for the most part in his career here the last 4 or 5 years. If you could get Keon Ellis on top of that, I think that would be something that you'd have to consider. Although, again, my impression was that the Warriors were completely out on DeRozan with Jimmy Butler, which makes sense because they operate in similar spaces on the court, and they are – DeRozan is much more of a ball holder and a ball stopper as much as he is a good isolation player and a good player at getting to the free throw line. So you wouldn't want him and Jimmy together. The other question comes as it relates to his contract, and I'll bring it up here as I look at the Kings' salaries and Sacramento's payroll. He's making 24.5 and then 25.7, but 10 million of that is guaranteed. So the Warriors could either pay him 10 million to go away or pay the 25.7 for next year on DeRozan. And then again, they could move him next year if Jimmy Butler comes back and is healthy. So they could get DeRozan as kind of the stopgap. Again, he is not as similar to Jimmy Butler as people think. Again, the intangibles and the defense and the rebounding, and DeRozan is basically a bucket getter at this point, working in a lot of isolation and in getting to the free throw line. He's kind of a more polished future Hall of Fame version in some ways of Kuminga, honestly, a little bit less athletic, 10, 12-year older version in terms of kind of the way you operate. And he's played in ball movement systems before. I mean, he played with San Antonio. He has been a good locker room guy. He's just never been somebody that I think actually pressures off has been something more that's fit his game. Like, he's played better when the pressure's been off. But again, there wouldn't be, I think, a lot of pressure. There would be no pressure to come in here and help the Warriors win a title or even win a playoff series, honestly. So I think in many ways, DeRozan would be welcomed into that locker room as an OG and a future Hall of Famer. I'm more open to that, no cap, than I would have been under any circumstances, considering Jimmy Butler being on the team. To me, you would go in a completely different direction. If you could figure out a way to get Keon Ellis also, I do think that would be beneficial. But again, I'm not sure Sacramento, believing that the Kings are desperate, would look to do that at this particular point in time. It pains me to say this, but the only name no one is talking about when it comes to trades is Steph. It's time to start talking about Curry being moved instead of everyone else. Appreciate it, Fozzie. Again, if you're looking to do that, then you're tearing the whole thing down. Like, you are basically saying it's over. And it's over, and you're ready to go back to being the great timeout Warriors starting in 2 weeks. And I don't think that's where the Warriors are at, and I don't think that's where the Warriors should be at this point, because Steph still is elite. I don't know why people are in such a hurry to make that the default option. I really don't. Now, if Steph says, hey, I want that, which he has not, and I think that's the other part of this thing too, is the simple fact that I think Steph is going to have to put some pressure on the Warriors. If he's kind of checked out and doesn't think they can win it, and again, it was a little bit shook, because again, I thought the veterans were more shook than the young players tonight. I thought the veterans were more shaken by everything that's gone on in the last 24 hours than the young players were. And if that's the case, then Steph needs to go in and say, look, do right by me or get me out of here. Like that, that's not his personality. But I think if you're somebody that wants this thing to continue to try to be salvaged, I think you're somebody that has to look at Steph as maybe needing to put a little bit more pressure on the organization, which is just not in his nature, a la many other stars, LeBron, over the years. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll take a timeout. Max, I don't think it's the default option, but didn't Bill Walsh say 2 years early is better than 2 years late? Sure. But again, you are, Max, going into – and again, are we talking about Steph on this? I want to make sure we're talking about Steph. Again, you're making the determination. When Bill Walsh was saying it, he was giving up players on championship level teams because they were drafting other players that were coming in to fill the void of players that were being taken away from championship level teams. This is not that. This is, we are going back to being the great timeout Warriors. We're rolling the clock back to 2001, hoping that the team can hit on some draft picks moving forward when they haven't been able to hit on draft picks in any semblance of a meaningful way here when they did get the lottery picks here of the last 5 years. So 808 KNBR 415-808-5627 Dubs OT with JD. We're rolling on here. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch. Phone lines open. We'll get to the Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line. More Kyle's Clicks coming up. We are going to come back and get into, though, some of the comments from pregame. And you're not going to want to miss what Mike Dunleavy had to say during his pregame press conference addressing the news about Jimmy Butler. We'll hear what Steve Kerr had to say surrounding Jimmy and him being lost for the season, as well as what to expect from Jonathan Kuminga, who did get an opportunity tonight and did score 20 points in the second half as the Warriors lose this one to the Toronto Raptors 145-127. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We'll continue the conversation next. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader.
Live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
I'm probably disappointed it hasn't worked out better, but it is what it is. And without getting into it too much, I think I have a pretty good understanding of what's gone on. And but there's still time left here. He's on our roster. I know the trade has been requested, but nothing's imminent. And things in this league can change in a heartbeat, as they did last night. So he's got to be ready, and we'll be ready.
All right, that's Mike Dunleavy pregame talking about Jonathan Kuminga, saying he was disappointed in the way things have worked out to this point, as Kuminga in year 5 hadn't played since December the 18th, but did get out there on the floor tonight. Warriors get blown out, handled really by the Raptors, 145 to 127. Some thrills in the second half. Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield go for 20 and 25 respectively. Warriors end up with a 6-2 homestand, but again, Jimmy Butler lost for the season as the Warriors do fall now to 25 and 20, 45 games in, 37 games to go, and we shall see what ultimately they do with just over 2 weeks to go before the trade deadline. But JK was ready to answer the bell and play. Steve Kerr went to him for a short stretch at the beginning of the second quarter, went back to him with the Warriors down 28 earlier on in the third quarter, and Kuminga did in the second half provide a spark, playing predominantly with other bench players and young players, and wasn't that positive for the night as well. He ended up a +3 for Golden State as he scored the 20 points. It ended up 7 of 10 from the field overall, 5 of 8 from the free throw line, had 5 boards. And, again, kind of gave some thrills to the Warrior fans who were excited. He got a warm ovation from the Chase Center crowd tonight, and the Chase Center crowd was excited for each time he got the ball and each bucket that went in. It kind of made for a pretty electric atmosphere, actually, as the Warriors were coming back in the second half and attempting to try and trim that 30-point lead down to single digits, which they did briefly. 808 KNBR. Before we hear more from Mike Dunleavy and from Steve Kerr, let's sneak in a call here with Ben in San Jose on Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Hey, what's going on tonight, Ben?
Hey, yo, JD, what up? This is Bennett Ross from the chat.
What's going on? Oh, what's going on, Bennett? How you doing, brother?
Yes, sir. Hey, everything's awesome, man. As always, man, grateful for the banter that you provide, and you provide us all in the YouTube chat, the best one that exists in the whole sports world. And, just wanted to come on, man. Usually, I'm always chiming in with, everybody from Robert Brown and Anders Brown and San Jose Jazz fan, and Reed to Steve and the eyes. But, hey, getting on tonight with you guys, I didn't see any of the game. I'm driving home right now from the Grammy nomination party that I was at tonight in Berkeley, and only got to see bits and pieces of the box score and little updates on it. So this is definitely helpful to hear how things went down in a life without Jimmy, kind of game. And, I wanted to just see about it from you, like how salvageable, how much life, how much faith can you put in this team if you, let's say, either one of two paths. If you stay with the roster that you mostly have, you kind of give Kuminga more and more chances to see if it'll impact their record positively. Or two, if you don't necessarily go out and try to swing for a name such as Anthony Davis, such as Michael Porter, such as Giannis, but what if you want to get somebody's second best player, a la who Jimmy was for you? And maybe that's somebody like, I know it might not be sexy, but let's say it's like Chris Middleton, or it's, I don't know, Peyton Watson, names like that.
Yeah.
Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I look. It's probably not either of those guys at this point, but I do think they have to be creative and not stand pat and necessarily believe too much in the players that they have. But to me, it all stems from the players that they have if Jimmy isn't going to be around. And look, Peyton Watson's not going anywhere at this point. Peyton Watson's been on one of late for Denver in the time that Joker's been out as well. You look at Middleton, and I'm looking at Middleton right now because he's been out of sight, out of mind for quite some time. And you look at Middleton overall here at this point. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Middleton been playing. He's been playing about 25 minutes a game or so. Yeah, I mean, he's averaging 10. He's averaging 10 points a game this year. He's not shooting the ball well from three. I don't know. He's 34. Like I just, to me, it's got to be a bigger name than that. If it's going to be somebody that the Warriors are going to be looking at. But no, I appreciate the call, Bennett. To me, it all is determined by the first thing you have to decide is what you're going to do with Jimmy. Are you going to hang on to Jimmy between now and the deadline? Which I think the easy answer is yes. Yes, you are going to look to do that. And unless something really opens up that maybe is unforeseen. By the way, I did want to point this out. Stephen Curry not meeting with the media tonight, post game, inside Chase Center. I find that to be interesting. Basically saying, yeah, I hate Zach LaVine, no cap. Jimmy for Zach LaVine, no. Zach LaVine is not a winning player. Not a winning player at all. Zach LaVine brings nothing to the table other than the ability to shoot. Yeah, nothing to the table. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. So that I would say is that I wouldn't go Zach LaVine. You don't want Zach LaVine. I don't want Zach LaVine does nothing but shoot. He no defense, no juke. He is not I go back to I wouldn't have given up Wiggins for LaVine back when that was a thing. So I wouldn't do that at all. But yeah, Steph not meeting with the media post game tonight. To come back to that point, I do not like LaVine. I do not like LaVine at all. LaVine is fine as a third guy or a fourth guy. I don't want LaVine as my number two guy. That's basically what it comes down to. But Steph not meeting with the media, I guess he just wanted the night off tonight to be able to process. Now, of course, the Warriors aren't going to be home for the next week. Their next home game is going to be a week from Friday, and of course, we'll be back here at Harmonic. It is highly unusual, and look, I'm not being critical of Steph or anything like that for not doing it, but I do think it clearly is an indicator that he's still shaking and processing his thoughts off of a bad game, a bad loss, the way things went down with Kuminga, and all of the debate, let's say, over what's coming up and what do the Warriors do and how much should he put. I think it is a little bit telling that Steph doesn't meet with the media. And again, he may do that 3 to 5 times a year during a home game, honestly, when he's playing. So it's extremely rare for Steph to not meet with the media when he's there. But tonight, one of those nights. And so, again, it's not nothing. And, as We the Champs babe points out in the YouTube chat, Steph knows the Dubs are done and the brass failed to properly build around him. I think there was a little bit of that, to be sure. Appreciate the call, though, Bennett. I do think the Warriors are going to have to look to be aggressive. And apologies for being a little distracted. I'm not a big DeRozan guy either. You guys know this. I know DeRozan is I know DeRozan is making the rounds in the chat. I am more open-minded on DeRozan, as I mentioned in the last segment, with the circumstances and Jimmy Butler being out, because he is somebody that he can score. I mean, he's right up there in the top 25 of all-time NBA scoring. He gets to the line. He can get to the basket a little bit. He's great in the mid-range. Again, I'm not a fan of his game with the Warriors having Jimmy, but I think it is something they're going to have to take a look at. Jamu 22, it's a nothing burger. Steph was tired. Yeah, we'll see. Again, it's unusual that Steph doesn't meet with the media. All right, let's get to the cuts that we wanted to play, then we'll get back into the YouTube chat. Let's get, and Kyle Har lined up, but 3 here from Dunleavy and a couple from Kerr. Let's get to the Dunleavy. This was the quote of the night and maybe the quote of the year in the Warriors universe. Here was Mike Dunleavy addressing the Jonathan Kuminga trade demand for the first time on the record.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the demand, I'm aware of that. I think when in terms of demands, when you make a demand, there needs to be demand on the market. So we'll see where that unfolds. But heard, always with these guys, I tell them I'm willing to work with them, want to help people out, whether that's JK or any player on our roster. So we're good with, if that's his wishes, trying to figure that out. But we got to do what's best for our organization, and that's what we'll do. And as far as it goes with the deadline coming up, I think we'll take the next couple of weeks to assess this team a little bit more. I felt pretty good with where we're at heading into last night's game in terms of what we need to do. I thought our team was playing really well, heading in the right direction. Obviously, things have changed. So I want to take a couple of weeks here to watch these games and see our team and what we can do better.
As far as the demand, I'm aware of that. In terms of demands, when there's a demand, there needs to be a demand on the market. So we'll see how that unfolds. That is a bar. That is a bar from Mike Dunleavy, basically saying to Jonathan Kuminga, hey, man, nobody wants you. So be ready if Steve Kerr goes to you and go out there and try to improve your trade value. I mean, that is exactly what Mike Dunleavy was saying at that point. On the break pod, telling the league you think a player has no value that you have is some real master chess play by Dunleavy. Telling the league you think a player has no value that you have. Tell one of your guys. Yeah. Again, it tells you how ugly and toxic the situation has become. And look, I think Dunleavy's is in lockstep with Steve Kerr on Kuminga and what he brings to the table with the rest of what the Warriors have built as anybody. And the thing that you have to wonder, and look, that's where nights like tonight, frankly, I think don't help. Like, we can give JK credit for going out there and scoring his 20 and being ready to play, but it was a self-serving 20, right, that didn't really impact much, kind of Minnesota series. But you've got Joe Lacob fist-pumping and acting like it's Game 7 of the finals, and the Warriors are about to win a championship. And so I hope that there isn't an internal pull between GM and coach and owner, because I think to this point, cooler heads have prevailed and everybody can kind of have their opinion and their perspectives and everybody's allowed to do their job accordingly. But if Joe Lacob is basically acting like one of the guys that you see on Twitter that think Kuminga can do no wrong and Kerr's wrecked his entire career and prevented him from being the Warriors' next star. Like, if Joe Lacob believes that and believes tonight matters and wants to see more of it, then this thing potentially is truly cooked as we head down the stretch here toward the end of the season and moving forward into the offseason. All right, let's continue to hear more from Mike Dunleavy, but that was a wow. That was a wow moment. In the pregame press conference from Dunleavy. Dunleavy also reacted to Jimmy Butler and him being out for the season, and again, pretty blunt and straight and to the point. I thought it was interesting. Steve said he believed in the team, and we'll play that clip moving forward. But let's hear what Mike Dunleavy had to say as far as where the Warriors stand here without Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't think there's an argument to make that we're a better team without Jimmy Butler. So no doubt that's that's something we're going to have to figure out and find a way to win some games. But I think this group's capable. With obviously with Steph and Draymond, their championship pedigree. You add in Al, who's been there. Mel's having a great year, and then our young players, BP, Moses, QP. I mean, we've got a good deep team. A lot of people are contributing, and there's no doubt in my mind we can continue to win games. We're just, let's call it what it is. We're not as good without Jimmy.
There you go. And that's, I think, pretty honest on Mike Dunleavy's part, and I think everybody can understand that. Joke's on you. Back to the YouTube chat pretty quick. JD, be honest. It's like you said. If Curry and Dre showed up, Kuminga game would have been a win. Well, not necessarily, because if Curry and Draymond had played well, Kuminga might have played less. Because that's again, here's where I am going to be honest. Kuminga got the run and the freedom that he did because the Warriors were down 30. Hello? He didn't play well in the first half. And again, they're down 28 at the moment in which he puts them in the game, and he sparked them. But the two are not equal, which is part of the issue with Kuminga throughout his entire now 4.5-year tenure with Golden State. You can't look at it that way. Yeah, if Steph and Draymond had showed up, which they didn't, and I correctly pointed that out, if you get all of it, sure. But the problem is the Warriors haven't been able to get all of it. And the reality is JK only got the opportunity to basically play like Minnesota series, JK, because the game was over. Can JK do that from the jump in a game and they win more than 20 out of 80 times? I don't know. 1 out of every 4 times? I don't know. Can you get that kind of game from JK while also getting the quality games from Steph and Draymond that you need to win enough? And that's been a resounding no. All right, let's keep it moving here. One more from Dunleavy. We touched on this briefly, but he also said this when asked about the ability to use the Jimmy Butler contract like they use the DeAnthony Melton contract now as an injured player to bring somebody else back into the fold.
I mean, I don't envision that, but now that you brought it up, I guess I'd say what I envision for him is kind of giving us a boost next year the same way he did last year when he arrived. And so, at some point during the season, him returning and being the player he's been. I mean, at his age, what he's doing this year to have the year he's had is impressive. I think he's got a style of game that can play for a long time with his skill, his physicality, his mind for the game. So I guess my vision for him is him, returning at some point between now and this time next year.
So there it is. That's what Mike Dunleavy has to say, again, on the initial plan as it relates to would they look to trade him at the deadline. It sounds like for the time being that's off, which would, again, the Warriors, if there's one thing their front office has been pretty consistent with, it's the fact that they don't like to make rash decisions, that they like to basically let things settle in and make an informed decision and be patient, probably a little too patient for a lot of the Warrior fan base, to be honest. So it sounds like, and again, you can debate how much you want to take Dunleavy at his word as to whether they'd move on from Jimmy or not. I'm taking him at his word, at least to this point, that it's not going to happen in the next 2 weeks and 2 days. That part, I think, is going to be true. But I also think you never know what's going to pop up. You never know what other demands are going to be made here between now and whatever ultimately happens 2 weeks and 2 days from now. But I did find it interesting that Dunleavy looked at it as, hey, we're going to be out without him for a year, and we think he can come back and really help in a year. manageable injury to be able to come back from, basically saying, hey, people come back from ACLs. Bold move for somebody at 37, although Jimmy doesn't exactly rely a ton on the athleticism. I think maybe the Warriors get a little bit of a feel for how the Butler recovery is going, and they reevaluate that in the offseason, because Jimmy would be a $60 million expiring contract come the summer of 2026, which you can obviously look to maneuver some things from that particular point. All right, let's hear a couple of Steve Kerrs. Here's Steve asked, and again, he was really trying to speak positivity into existence during his pregame. Didn't play out when the Warriors hit the floor early, but here's what he said about the state of this team without Jimmy Butler here moving forward now for the final 37 games of this season.
We're well equipped with our depth to continue to play at a high level. I like the team. I think the difference from last year to this year to me is Melton and Al Horford. Not to mention Quentin Post for a full year. At this stage last year, before we traded for Jimmy, didn't feel like we had enough to really compete. I think we have enough to compete. I think Al and Melt have given us a different dynamic. I think a lot of our young players, Quentin, Will Richard, those guys are ready to contribute. They have contributed. We've got depth. So we can keep this thing going. Obviously, we'll miss Jimmy, and he's one of the best players in the league. So you can't minimize that, trivialize it.
And I think, one game in, and again, bad matchup for the Dubs as they play a Toronto team that even when the Warriors are fully healthy, give them fits. But I just, the concern that I have is the fact that without Jimmy, a lot of these guys who were performing so well with Jimmy are just going to crater right back to the players they were pre-Jimmy. And the Warriors are going to have to hope they don't, because if they do, this thing's going to be in major trouble moving forward here. And basically, we're going to be talking about a play-in tournament team. We're going to be talking about a 7-10 kind of a team, I feel like, regardless. And it's unfortunate because 24 hours ago, I think you would have thought, or 26 hours ago or whatever it was, I think you would have thought, hey, this team's got major action to be able to get to the 6 seed or even potentially get to the 4 seed. But Steve trying to instill confidence in his young players, in his squad. And I'll say it again, the problem is that the veteran players didn't have the confidence. And that's a little bit concerning. All right, let's hear one more from Steve. This one is going to be a post-game Steve on Kuminga's game tonight. And again, 20 points, all in the second half. And Kuminga able to get it going and again, spark the team when they were down by 30 to pull from 28 down to get it to a 9-point game. Here was Kerr on Jonathan Kuminga's second half and overall positive night, getting himself back into the rotation.
Yeah, he came in and had great energy, attacked the rim, made some shots. I thought JK was really good, and it's a great sign. With Jimmy out, obviously there's a hole in at that spot on our roster. So JK is going to factor in here again, and really pleased with the way he stayed ready and stayed prepared, and got his opportunity and played really well.
So there you go. All credit to Jonathan Kuminga, as a certain portion of the chat and the listener base and social media just screams, "You did this to him, Steve. You did this to him. It's your fault. You could have had this every night with Jimmy and Steph and Draymond and everybody else." Yeah. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. But people are probably screaming it. As I saw on social media, and forgive me, I can't remember where I saw it, but somebody said, "Bad night for the Warriors, great night for Jonathan Kuminga fans." As he ends up with 20, and the Warriors end up losing this game by 18. All right, let's get a couple of YouTube chats. here, and then we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, and we'll wrap things up. That is going to be our Sounds of Dubs OT for tonight. Again, Steph didn't talk post-game. Kuminga didn't talk post-game. Draymond, maybe we'll work in a Draymond clip coming back from the next break. Draymond was the team spokesman tonight, along with the head coach, Steve Kerr. So maybe we'll work a Draymond clip into the next segment here as he manned up and spoke for Steph and spoke for the veterans. But let's get three more here. We'll take a timeout. We'll wrap things up here on Dubs OT. JK was lethargic in his first stint. Steve did say, though, JK said he's not like Gee, need time before he can get into it, which is why he was benched. No, absolutely. And he was. JK looked like he didn't want to be out there in his first stint. He really did. Is that rust? Again, I said it earlier, and I'll reiterate now. I'm going to give Kuminga the benefit of the doubt on the first stint because he hadn't played in over a month. So I'm not going to say, hey, he looked like a dude that didn't want to be out there. That could just be rust. And again, the game that he was playing in the first half was a game that was trying to be cohesive to everyone else that was out there. The game that he played in the second half was, bleep it, we're down 30. I'm after the first play from Draymond where he got the dunk, I'm just going to look to try to cook and get mine. And again, that tonight helped the Warriors get back into the game and provided some thrills inside Chase Center. All right, let's get two more. Joe Schmo, Warriors at a crossroads. This season wasn't on a roll, more like a 500 team. What will they do? Well, they would tell you they were getting on a roll. 12 of 16, 6 over 500, with the potential to be adding somebody at the trade deadline in 2 weeks. So more like a 500 team. What will they do? Move JK, Butler, keep it rolling, or pivot? I'll say it again, Joe Schmo. I would still move Kuminga. And, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking as a default fallback option, I might look to do the DeRozan, the DeRozan deal if that proves to be the best you can come up with. Although again, I will tell you the Warriors were not thinking highly of DeRozan going back to the pre Jimmy time. All right, one more. Mr. E-Painter. Steph is on the verge of a mental breakdown. No cap. This injury hurts Steph more than Jimmy. Steph wants to win. I think there's something to that. I think there is something to that, and why Steph is trying to process everything before he ends up speaking to the media, which, oh, by the way, is not going to happen in the Bay Area now because the Warriors are flying to Dallas tomorrow, where they're going to begin this road trip in Dallas Thursday, games against Minnesota Saturday and Monday, and then in Utah. The next Warrior home game is not until a week from Friday. So basically 9 days from tomorrow is the next Warriors home game as the 8-game homestand comes to an end. And so Steph isn't going to have to do the full rigmarole. He'll do it Thursday at a shoot-around in Dallas, or he'll do it Thursday post-game in the Warriors locker room with 4 or 5 beat writers that are on the trip. Nick Friedel and Slater and Joseph Dicus and Sam Gordon. And that's probably – so it's do it in front of everybody tonight or do it in front of a few people coming up on Thursday in Dallas. All right, let's take a timeout. Final segment straight ahead. Warriors lose 145 to 127. We'll get our last installment of Kyle's Clicks. Dubs OT with JD rolling on here on the Sports Leader.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Dubs OT with John Dickinson continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
I think initially you feel for him. You know the amount of work that he puts in to be who he is, and this is what we do. This is your rhythm, your flow, your reality, and so that's altered. So first you feel for him, and then you just try to process it. It's emotionally draining, but you just try to do your best at processing and moving forward.
All right, Draymond Green there, back here, Dubs OT. Final 2-3 minutes here as we call it a night on this Tuesday from Harmonic in Thrive City. I think that's something we haven't mentioned tonight. You definitely do feel for Jimmy Butler. And how great has Jimmy Butler been during his time with the Warriors? Amazing, and not even a year, and we'll see what he's got left in the tank. All right, let's get to – we're going to skip fun with numbers tonight. Let's get our final Kyle's clicks, and then we'll close up shop here. Reconvene on Thursday, SD, RQ4UG. I think Kuminga playing ups his value, but a trade is good for all parties. Yeah, I still think they should look to move him. Keeping it on a roll here, rapid fire, Dr. P. The losing will continue until a trade is made. Unfortunately, I think that's also true. I just don't think this team is very good without Jimmy Butler, and they're going to have to figure out how to be able to compete in the short term while maybe bringing it back to Jimmy when he can come back at the beginning or middle of next year to have a shot at trying to make a little noise in the playoffs. All right, 4.5 years and still waiting for JK to develop. We'll see. Again, that's the truth, which is why I think ultimately he will be traded in the next 16 days. All right, 2 more. Irwin, Art imitates life. We all said JK wouldn't play, but lo and behold, he not only plays, but he also plays well. Again, he did play well tonight, 20 points. I'm actually not surprised. I think it makes sense, given the circumstances, to give him a shot, and the Warriors did. All right, let's get our comment of the night, and then that is it from Harmonic here on this Tuesday.
Now, time for the Dubs OT comment of the night.
Robert Brown, Steph to me is like Derek Jeter, like a Derek Jeter not going to happen. I don't know what that means. Leaving. Yeah, I don't think he's going to ask. I don't think he's about to ask out or anything like that. I do think he would prefer to play with the Warriors for the remainder of his career, to be sure. All right, that's going to do it. Big thanks to Grace and Shay out here at Harmonic, doing a wonderful job as always. We have Kyle Haar, Jordan Pratari. Anybody I'm forgetting, Kyle?
Yeah, we had
Dave, of course.
Dave and Gabe, another newbie. So we've had a couple of newbies this week, but they've been doing a good job.
Yeah, doing a good job. And Austin Scott doing a great job. He covered the pre- and post-game press conferences. Austin Scott, 14 days in a row. Every day, Austin. 14 days in a row for the leader. He's going to enjoy an off day tomorrow. He's been to Seattle. He's been to Philly. He's been at Chase. All of these nights where he wasn't in Seattle or Philly. He's a great guy, does great work. KMBR socials. He is, as I always say, our best employee at his job, at the leader. Point blank, bottom line, end of story. So we'll talk to you Thursday after the Dubs and the Mavs. Big thanks to everybody in the chat, the callers, the texters. Dubs OT with JD, the sports leader. John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Big audio quality show.
You are a sicko, and I appreciate you for it because I'm a sicko.
I turn it over.
I just know they kicked our ass tonight.
Do some closeout drills, play some one-on-one, see who got what.